It's Monday morning. You log into the company email, and first it wants a code from your phone, and then needs your fingerprint or your face. My colleague has now sent you a link to that document that you wanted from last week's meeting. You try and open it, but you don't have access, and you have to ask for it. A little later, you launch an app, and it tells you have to update it before you can use it. And once it's updated, you might have to log in again. And it's really easy to think, really? Can't the developers just figure out the authentication so this all just works and I don't have to keep doing this again and again? But here's the thing. This isn't a bug. A lot of this behavior is intentional and by design. It might sometimes feel inconvenient, but this is part of a bigger security idea called zero trust. The first time you hear zero trust, it might sound harsh, like the company doesn't trust you personally, or that IT is so paranoid they're going to lock everything down so tightly nobody can get anything done. It's not that. Zero trust basically means just because you get in once, that does not mean you are then trusted automatically and continuously. You see, in the past, company network security was kind of like a medieval castle.
Our security comes from our thick walls and impressive gates.
But the thing is, once you're through the gates, you are in. And everything inside was accessible. When the only security is outward-facing, then all somebody needs is a back door, a tunnel, a crack in the wall, any method we could use to bypass that security.
All we need is one way in.
And the entire system is vulnerable because there's no security running on the inside. But zero trust treats systems more like a modern hotel. You check in, you prove who you are, and you get a key. But it isn't a master key. Your keycard will get you to your room and only your room. Okay, maybe the gym, maybe the pool, but even the elevator will only take you to the floors you're allowed to go to. And it will check you every single time. And even if your card works today, that doesn't mean it'll work next week or next month after you've checked out. So we never just trust. We always verify. And we continue to verify again and again and again. So, in a modern organization's computer system, several checkpoints make this happen. The first checkpoint is identity. Who are you, and how do you prove that? Now, in the past, that might have just been a username and password. These days, it's more often to need Multi-Factor Authentication, or MFA, so instead of just one thing like a password, you need a password plus a code, or a password plus a fingerprint or Face ID. And then there's passwordless authentication, which is no password at all, only the stronger methods like tokens or biometrics. So we establish who you are, and that's identity. But the next question is, okay, so what are you allowed to do? And that is access control. That you only get into the parts of the system you actually need. You don't get to open every door. You don't get access to every database. Just what is required for your role. This is sometimes called the principle of least privilege, that by default, people are only granted the very minimum access they need to do their job. If you don't need admin rights for a particular system, you don't get them. If you don't need to see the payroll application at all, you can't. So even if someone's account is compromised and an attacker does gain access, the damage is still limited. So your identity matters, your access control matters, and your devices matter too, because your equipment has to be safe. And that's why companies now nag about operating system updates and application updates, because any kind of unpatched software is a prime target. And many systems now enforce trusted access, that your laptop or your device has to prove that it's healthy before it's allowed to touch sensitive data. And it's not just about software updates, because most organizations also use additional software that will run continuously on the systems, watching for suspicious activity on the network. How you behave, not just who you are. They check your device health, your location, the requests you're making, and whether those requests even make sense. So if you usually work 9 to 5 from Denver, Colorado, But suddenly, at 3 a.m. in the morning, someone with your credentials is trying to download the entire customer database from a location in Romania. That should trigger some alarms, and it will either block that request entirely or it will demand additional verification. Maybe there is a reason for this, so you may get a push notification on your phone asking, "Hey, is this really you?" But while we're talking about network access, you see, for years, a lot of organizations used VPNs, virtual private networks, meaning secure tunnels into the corporate network. The challenge with VPNs is often that assumption that as long as you have authenticated correctly to the VPN, you are then trusted. And it was really the same problem as that castle idea, that once you're in the VPN tunnel, you can go anywhere and do anything. And ransomware loved this, because if you had one compromised laptop with access to the VPN, game over. So these days, for security, more and more organizations use just the regular HTTPS, the same kind of encryption that protects your typical day-to-day online banking, meaning that all communication is encrypted, and they will still continually verify your identity, your access control, and your device. And even if you're on site at an office, Zero Trust means we use approaches like network segmentation. It's kind of like treating a network like a well-designed office building, in the way that the accounting department is separate from the engineering department, or marketing can't just wander into HR. It becomes the same idea on the network. Perhaps printers might be on one segment, employee laptops on another segment, mobile devices on another segment, and those servers with their sensitive financial data could have their own locked-down neighborhood in that network, so that if something does go wrong in one area, it doesn't automatically spread. So yes, Zero Trust can feel more inconvenient. There's a few more logins, a few more reboots, more checks. But those little interruptions, and we do try and keep them as little interruptions, that is Zero Trust at work, protecting the business, it's protecting the data, and ultimately you. And Zero Trust isn't about paranoia. It's much more about being realistic about this. Passwords get stolen. Devices get compromised. People click bad links. These things will happen. So when they do, Zero Trust makes sure that one compromised account doesn't become a company-wide disaster.